We've got a really interesting session that we're about to kick off here. Kind of a special topic. This is the first time that we're doing this as part of the forum, and we're going to hear from our Young Leaders Council, which is essentially a board similar to the Accounting Advisory Board, but made up of the movers and shakers who are a little bit younger than people like me. And they've got wonderful, wonderful perspective. And we thought it'd be a great idea to bring them together, moderate a nice discussion. And so hopefully look forward to it. So I'm going to ask Matthew Phillips, who is an accounting professor at the University of Miami, who's going to moderate the discussion, to pop on, introduce himself and his panelists, and enjoy the topic.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Phillips. Thank you for the introduction, Mark. So I'll be moderating the session with the Young Leaders Group, and we'll talk about a few different topics. Some that we've talked about, a few different times this morning. With the SASB discussion, Christina's the academic perspective on some of these ESG related matters, the executive perspective, and now we'll give you a little bit of the young leaders perspective, in addition to some other things relevant to South Florida business. Just real quickly, I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves, but my name is Matthew Phillips. I'm a professor here at UM. I got my PhD from UM in addition to my undergrad, my bachelor's and my master's degree. So I'm a triple cane. I had the IBIS at my wedding. UM's very special to me, and I've been associated with the department in some capacity for almost 15 years. Did a brief stint at EY, and then found my calling into academia and came back. And so it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to teach the classes that I sat in not too long ago. I know, Robbie, Jasmine, and Shannon can all attest to that. The Young Leaders Group is, like Mark had mentioned, it's made up of kind of the movers and shakers, the alumni that really have a tight tie to the department, are very well connected amongst the business community and have risen in the ranks amongst in their respective companies. And so, we think that this will be a really nice perspective to lend, in addition to, some of the other types of panels that you guys have been exposed to this morning. So, without further ado, I'll give it over to Jasmine to do her background, talk a little bit about her background, and then Shannon and Robbie. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Holmes, and I'm a double cane. I am a graduate of the Accelerated Accounting Program a few years ago, and I started my career with PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I'm a manager in our cyber risk and regulatory group. I am very pleased to be here and honored to be here to speak with you today, and I'll pass it along to Shannon.
Thanks, Jasmine. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shannon Nurse. Like Jasmine, I'm a double cane graduate from the Accelerated Master's Program. Starting Monday, I will be the head of tax at Ideal Image, which is a wellness and aesthetic company. But if you talked to me last week, I was at Deloitte. I was a senior manager at Deloitte. And here in the Miami office. So up until last week, it's a little bit of a transition time, which is makes it pretty fun. But my focus was on tax planning and reporting, tax provisions, and various tax compliance projects, including bankruptcy, debt restructure, methods planning, business combinations, all sorts of fun stuff. I've known Jasmine and Robbie and Matt for quite some time, so it's great to be on the panel with you guys, and wanted to thank everybody for spending your lunch hour with us. We're gonna keep this fun and hopefully keep it like a lunchtime conversation, so we want to keep it interesting. Outside of work, just for reference, obviously we're all on the Young Leaders Group and stay connected with UM through that, as well as some other alumni associations. And I'm also on the board of Dress for Success, Suited for Success Miami. So I'll turn it over to Robbie to introduce himself.
Thanks, Shannon, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robbie Gisty. I'm a manager at Kaufman Ross in the Insurance Services Department. I've been here for the past 5 years now, which is amazing that it's already been 5 years at this company. I've really enjoyed my time here. I serve a wide range of clients in areas such as real estate, manufacturing and distribution, retail, nonprofits. I'm the self-proclaimed vice commissioner of the Dade County CPA Softball League as well. And prior to KR, I was actually at Deloitte with Shannon in their South Florida audit practice. And I also graduated from our wonderful Accelerated Master of Accounting program. So you kind of get the theme here that we're all very much big fans of that program. And I've always been very involved with ever since graduation. And even when it hurts, like last night, I can still hear the goalpost ringing in my head, from the football game. And I know Shannon was there as well. As far as my involvement with I've been very involved with our accounting program since graduating, coming back to speak to students whenever possible, attending Beta Alpha Psi events, and just trying to continue to encourage our students at to choose the accounting profession, and also give them helpful tips as they go through the program, which has been very impactful in our lives, and we know will be very impactful in their lives as well.
So just kind of getting things kicked off. The first topic that we wanted to talk to everyone about this morning was about South Florida kind of economic developments. We've seen a lot in the business press about relocation down to South Florida, investment in South Florida. So we'll kind of start there. Robbie, if you could give us a little bit of a perspective on some of those developments, some of the reasons that that South Florida is so attractive now to young professionals and to businesses. I think that'd be a good place for us to start here.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, so I think the last couple of years, what's been interesting is, at least from my perspective, I was born and raised in West Palm Beach, and went to school, high school in Boca, and then for college. So I've spent most of my life down here. And I think what's been really cool over the last couple of years is I don't hear about South Florida as much of being like, oh yes, that's where my grandmother lives, or that's where my grandfather, and now we're really starting to see that trend over the past couple of years due to due to other factors as well. But the pandemic has really caused leaders to start moving here. And that's definitely something that's really been a big factor on South Florida. And it's neat to actually be a part of that. And I think what's great for is our location down here, being in the center of what has really become like the hottest real estate in the world over the past year or so. It's really a great position for to be in, and I really hope that we capitalize on it going forward. This increased acceptability of remote work, that's people can live wherever they want, so it's such an important thing. Business friendly tax policy, just so many different things that are really helpful to getting businesses down here. And low corporate income tax, zero personal income tax. I mean, these are very, very attractive things for business leaders around the globe, particularly in the United States as well. It's a little easier if you're already in the U.S. to move down here. And I know that Shannon, I know, has some experience with kind of the tax concepts here, so maybe she can chime in a little bit on this.
Yeah, absolutely, Robbie. I think you hit on it. I mean, the low corporate income tax rates are great from a business perspective. The zero personal income tax really makes people excited to come live in Florida. And, with the ability to work remotely, I think a lot of people with the pandemic just kind of said, why not? I mean, I know I moved to Florida about 13 years ago, something like that. I was getting razzed beforehand on my Green Bay Packers mug. I'm a Wisconsin girl at heart, but I've been in Florida for quite some time. But I remember coming down and thinking, who wouldn't want to live here? This is, it's beautiful, great weather. And then I think from a business perspective, they're really able to attract top talent. There's a very diverse work culture here. We've got people from all over the place. And I think we see that at as well. Just, the UM's community is very diverse. And I think that gets reflected in the overall business community.
Sure. And, I think what I was thinking about earlier with the diverse work culture, and it's kind of been a topic that we've been talking about. I know we're going to get a little more into it later in our discussion, but I mean, South Florida, growing up from being down here and just our connection to Latin America and South America, Central America, and how we've really had leaders both politically and in business that have been very diverse for quite some time. So I think that it's something that we offer down here that might be a little, I think as the world is really focusing in on this a lot, to me, it's something that it felt to me like it was kind of something that I was experiencing from a young age, just, diversity and leadership down here. So I think that's another aspect of South Florida that is very comforting for many people that, I'd like to say that down here, it's something that we've already embodied and embraced for quite some time with regards to our leadership down here. So that is just another factor that really has encouraged people as far as, moving to South Florida, basically with that true like American dream feeling of, if you want to make it, like you can do it here in South Florida. And so that's definitely a very important aspect of South Florida in my view.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add in is I remember having conversations with Ms. McPhillip while we were still at talking about that brain drain, right? We have so much great talent that comes to South Florida, but being able to retain that talent in South Florida has been a challenge for some time. And I think that we're finally being able to retain more of that talent in South Florida, in addition to attracting that new talent, which I think is really great for our community as more technology companies are coming to the area. As more, I know from the professional services perspective, I feel like there's definitely a re-evaluation of real estate strategy. But when it comes to other industries, I really think that they're going to continue to grow and thrive in our community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Jasmine. I mean, lending a little bit from the young leaders' perspective of coming out of school, right? Like I totally agree with you in the beginning. At least when I first got here, a lot of the people that graduated from our programs were going either back home or going to somewhere else in the country. New York or San Francisco, some of these big metropolitan areas that we're doing very well at attracting talent, but the conversation is definitely shifting to opportunities that are here. It's great, because we have more companies that are committing resources to South Florida. We see more investment in South Florida, and that makes a big difference when it comes to our graduates' decisions on where to go. So we're not having any problem attracting the top students down here. We're seeing that across the board. From the university's perspective, particularly in the business school. But keeping them, like you said, has been a challenge. But when the economic perspective and picture for young professionals changes to such a degree, you see that that's less of an issue, right? Brickell in particular, right? That's a great place to be a young professional right now with the growth that we've seen there, and the development downtown. So kind of having said that, Robbie, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the development that we're seeing and some of the other things that are really, attractive to both the businesses and to young professionals on the infrastructure side.
Sure. Just a couple things. A couple other things just with regards to business and travel down here. There's been MIA, the airport has been overtaking JFK in Los Angeles in international travel. And that's kind of something that I don't know if I ever expected to see things like that occurring. I'm glad to see that. It's amazing that we've been achieving those types of stats lately. But and there's obviously a piece of this that's related to COVID, and we've been very helpful as a state in encouraging and advertising directly to countries abroad to come here, get the vaccine and then fly back home. But it's a great, I think it's great exposure for our area to get, this kind of, recognition And so, but yeah, going forward, as far as, and also kind of talking about the foreign investment that's been going on down here, over the course of the pandemic, early in the pandemic, when we weren't really sure what was going on with the economy, a lot of the international investors in real estate had kind of pulled back. And so it's nice to see now that that's kind of shifting more back to 50-50 where it was before. And we've got a lot of additional investment from domestic parties, but then also getting our international parties back on board. That's really what's been such a fueling of the real estate market down here in South Florida, and why, a big reason why our prices are just so high, and everything is so valuable down here now. It's amazing the types of houses that are going for $500,000 now. But that's just kind of where we're at. And as far as getting all those people, we're definitely going to be looking at there's a lot of upzoning that's being planned along that Metro rail line, because as people are coming in, obviously we need to as a community we're looking to make it easier to not necessarily have a car when you're living here. So I have a slide here on upzoning along major transit lines, and how there's areas where upzoning is being discussed, and it would be obviously helpful to those who are coming from communities where they weren't necessarily used to having a car, and now that they've coming down here, that's just their way of life. So it's another way of attracting them in the future, and also being very effective and efficient as far as travel, and not congesting our roads, maybe decongesting them a little bit. Those types of things are very important. And basically, for UM itself, the way that all of these developments are coming along, whether it's Brightline, a monorail between downtown Miami and Miami Beach, we'll have a scenario where students are coming to UM, and even though they typically don't let freshmen have a car in their first year, and then you kind of have to get the seniority to have a car on campus, but the hope is that, thankfully, being on the Metro rail line as a campus, you're going to be able to access almost everything Miami has to offer without even getting into an Uber if you don't want to. So it's really, and you can go to Disney and eventually Tampa. You'll be able to do a lot without even needing anything that's got tires, really. So from the UM campus, which I think will be really an incredible thing in the future for us.
Yeah, I totally agree, Robbie. And, I know there's been some construction on the underline as well, which is sort of the park under the Metro rail. And, I live in Brickell. And so seeing that, come to life has been just so great. This went from, an area or, a space that just was, there was nothing under, there's this useless kind of space there, to being a park, and, seeing people play soccer and basketball, and, I ride my bike through there, and it's just, it really has helped kind of, beautify the city and make that space really useful. So that's been great to see. It's just so much activity in Miami in terms of transit over the last couple of years, and, expected to continue over the next few years.
Sure. The underline, it's going to take a while to get that completely done. At the moment, it's scheduled to be totally finished at 2025. But that park is really supposed to go all the way down to Dayland Station. And what's really neat about that is you can really, on the weekend, I love to walk around town. I love to enjoy being outside, and people who are moving here, that's one of the huge reasons why they want to move here, is you can be, obviously you got the rain. But one of the nice things about, if all of a sudden one of those pop-up showers happens, if you're on the Metro, if you're on the underline, you can just get on the Metro rail and get back home without getting, maybe totally rained on. But it's something that I could see people on the weekend, like making it like a day trip, to get some great exercise, but also walking up and down the underline. And there's so many different businesses and restaurants along US 1 and then in downtown. You can make, you can get great exercise on the weekend, and also enjoy the community at the same time. So I'm really excited to see how the underline plays out. And obviously it'll go through UM as well. So that'll be another nice it'll be, especially for those, obviously we got a lot of New Yorkers. And so this is very much modeled like the High Line in New York City.
Right.
So I think the New Yorkers that'll be coming down to UM will be very happy to have something like it right there in their backyard, right outside of the freshman dorms.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And we know, from the emphasis and on the political side, right, that there's a lot of publicity about infrastructure projects and for Miami in particular being, central to that. That's it, it makes it, for anybody that's interested in coming here, you can clearly see the vision for where this is going to be, and some of those inconveniences we experience now, like the congestion and the dependence on cars in particular. At least there's some plan for alleviating those. So the next thing that we wanted to talk with everyone about or lend some of the young leaders' perspective on is the impact of COVID-19 in the workplace. And so we talked a little bit before about how the pandemic was shifting an emphasis to South Florida from other regions that were hit, economically hit from to a differential point. And so, now wanted to talk a little bit about, how that's, some of the impacts that we've seen in the workplace, particularly from the younger perspective, with people that are coming out of school, just getting their first job and walking into an environment where it's remote. You're not meeting at the water cooler, the coffee desk anymore. Obviously there's very, important implications. It's, Miguel shared a little bit about how excited we were to have people actually in class, right, as opposed to remote. So, Shannon, maybe you can lead us off a little bit with some of the big points in terms of, the impact of COVID-19 on the workplace and lead off the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I think just COVID-19 obviously is just top of mind for everybody. The pandemic really shifted so many areas of our personal lives, but also our work lives. I think, number one, the technology shift has been crazy. The ability for companies to do so much more, remotely than I think most people ever expected. I know personally, I was somebody that was in the office, most days, or if not in the office, at a client's office, but, kind of in person all the time. And then it seemed like overnight we just shifted to a completely virtual environment. So that technology shift was interesting. And, I think that's a big area. And I'll get, kind of go into that a little bit more. And I'd love to hear Robbie and Jasmine's perspective. I also think, mental health was a huge, issue and, but opportunity as well, for all all folks in the workplace, younger folks and more experienced folks as well. I think there was a huge impact on that. And it was good and bad. I think there was a mix of that where, there was one set where maybe people felt a little bit more isolated and disconnected. But I think there were some opportunities and benefits there as well, where, you got to maybe spend more time at home with people that, with your family and that sort of thing. And maybe got to have dinner with people more often, or, with the people in your immediate circle. Maybe you could work virtually or work remotely from a different location, like people who moved to South Florida. So, I know from my personal experience, I was able to work remotely in a different state. My sister had a baby last year, and I went up there for a month to help with the baby. And I would have never dreamed of being able to do that, in pre-pandemic world. I just wouldn't have done that, maybe taken a week and gone up, but I never would have just thought I could work remotely. And it worked great. So, I'd love to hear from Robbie and Jasmine too, your thoughts on that from it seems like there's kind of mixed, the emotions and mixed thoughts on the impact of mental health. And I think we probably all collectively have those mixed thoughts, but would love to hear, what you guys thought and maybe the impact from your perspective on what your companies did and that sort of thing.
Sure, Shannon. So I think that we've definitely had to shift in a way that everyone is more self-aware, right? If nothing else, incredibly more self-aware. And I know that I was very grateful that my organization provided so many resources related to holistic well-being, right? Including mental health, your physical health, emotional health, all of the above, and all of the different aspects of energy and remaining energized to live a productive life and bring your best self to work, right? And I like that we had different options, right? We had access to Ginger, right? Which I started taking advantage of March of this year, and I still leverage to this day. There's, additional, free counseling sessions that, were brought in. And then there's apps like Brain FM and different apps to really cater to different needs. And however our people wanted to interact with them, they were encouraged to, they're incentivized to use. And I think that they've been useful. And I think there was definitely skepticism about, okay, is this just, for now, like a trend, right? Is it that, okay, they only care about our well-being, for a little while? And I can say this about not specifically like PwC, but just in general, like, is this well-being thing like here to stay, or is it, just so that, we are still an attractive firm, right? And I can say from my experience, there's been a lot of support that I received. And so I think that everybody definitely has different needs and different experiences with it. But I think across the board, we've seen even our clients embracing it more, having well-being Fridays, or incentivizing vacation. I know at PwC over the past year or so, been incentivized to take 5 consecutive days of vacation, right? Because people weren't taking their vacation because we're living where we work rather than working where we live, right? Spending majority of our day still working and never feeling like you can really escape it, and having to be that much more intentional about taking care of yourself, your family, and establishing boundaries. So I will pause there and shift to Ravi. What are your thoughts?
Those are great, Jasmine. I mean, I think one of the most interesting things in this area to me, I guess, in this period was I think for as far as technology is concerned, I think the younger individuals in the business world might have been a little bit more well versed with using technology and, like, having video calls and whatnot. But it was really cool to see those who are, more, older in the profession get better at that, and, like, actually be able to use that. And in many cases, they really liked it. And which is interesting, just kind of to watch that happen, because it's kind of, to me, it's caused people to be able to choose, like, what works best for you, what helps your mental health as you're doing your work. Like, can you, maybe you want to be in the office, some days of the week, maybe some days of the week you really just want to be home and really focus and, like, not get any, like, distractions that can occur in the workplace, but you still want to get that mix of the in-person touch as well. So that was not always, it's just such a more widely accepted practice now going forward. And so many companies are hiring people fully remote. It's like, yes, we're in South Florida, but you're in Georgia. Yeah, we'll hire you. Like, you never have to come down here per se. I mean, if you would like to, you can, but it's really, it's been great to see people able to make a huge impact in their work, but also at the same time, getting their lives in a little bit more of a convenience for them that makes them mentally more healthy, which in turn is actually helping them produce better at the same time. So it's nice to have people able to do that. I personally like to be in person a lot more than over video, but I'm not. I mean, I'm myself. Like, it's everybody is different, and so the way people's lives work are all different. And I think what this has opened up is the ability for people to be effective in many different ways that they never thought that they could in a work environment. So it's really nice to see that happen. I know that our firm had they gave us some mental health days, where kind of some extra PTO days to use during the thick of the pandemic, when they knew that things were just kind of rough, and everybody was just a little uneasy about things. So it's obviously nothing like this has ever happened before, at least in the modern era. So everybody did many different things, but I hope that going forward, we take this, and this ability to use technology to do work anywhere is great. I do hope that we keep the personal touch, but it's nice that we can do it in a way where we can be more effective and make our lives a little bit easier at times, which hopefully at the end of the day will improve everyone's work product. So that's my hope and my comments on this area.
Yeah, Robbie. So it's interesting talking about the personal touch too, right? Because I think one interesting thing that came out of the pandemic, at least maybe just for me, but I think a lot of people notice this, is that use of technology and using video. And even though we weren't together, I think some of that using video and kind of introducing technology, not only with your peers and colleagues, but also with clients, it actually brought people closer. So you got insight into people's offices or living rooms or whatever, and saw their kids running around and their pets, dogs barking in the background. My cat walked across my keyboard, and just, having that really, broke down some barriers. And I know that helped me build some strong relationships with clients where, I might have seen them formally in an office and, every so often, but we would go on video calls every day or every couple days, and you would just, see them in that more kind of casual and personal environment. And I think that actually brought people closer. And so that was kind of an interesting, probably unexpected thing that came out of that for me, is really getting to know people and getting to know their families. Even though we weren't together, you really got that to build those relationships.
Right.
One thing that as you guys were talking about that I was thinking is, for people that had known what it was like to go to work in person, obviously there's a little bit of a different adjustment relative to those that never experienced that, right? That came into the firms, in January to March of last year or last summer. Obviously the corporate hiring is a little bit different, but I was wondering if you guys could share some of your perspectives on the feedback that you've gotten from your entry-level staff or your younger level staff, on how effective some of these programs that you guys have been talking about, the firms and some of these companies have implemented, with respect to their experience, how comfortable they feel with that environment, how included they feel, how connected to the organization they feel. Because I think that's a pretty important perspective to lend as well.
I think it's been tough. I honestly, from the feedback that I've heard, I think the firms and, companies that I've seen are doing a good job of trying to put stuff in, put in programs and, implement a whole bunch of different things to make sure that everyone's connected. But to your point, Matt, that's easier if you already had that connection, and it's easier to stay connected with people you already talked to and kind of knew their personality and their working style and that sort of thing. I think it takes a lot of extra effort to develop that. I think, video calls and that sort of thing does help, but I think it's been challenging, and I'm sure any young person who would join a company probably feels that it's been pretty challenging.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
Sorry, go ahead, Jasmine.
I was just gonna mention, I know I've specifically had some staff who came and have already, left, right? Unfortunately, but it's like building that community with them, and making sure that they really feel part of the team it is challenging, Shannon. I completely agree with you. And in addition to the transition for them, it's also the transition like for management, right? And having to modify a lot of our leadership style and how we're reaching them. So it's a learning curve on our part as well. and you layer on top of that all of the changes that are happening at the like for the whole entire organization, and it's like the rate of change just keeps increasing. So dealing with that increasing rate of change happening within the organization, what's happening in the industry. And I also work a lot with recruiting. I think all three of us do. And it's like, okay, so now understanding how that translates into helping students figure out, what path they want to take and get them to understand what their options are. And it has the trickle down effect. So what were you going to say, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, we have individuals who we've hired over the course of this that unfortunately I haven't met in person yet, and but they're incredible individuals, and we've done the best that we can as far as onboarding them and training them. It's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for us as leaders, and then I know it's a challenge for them as well on their part, and it's something that we're all going to have to keep getting better at. I guess as we go forward, that's what's so crazy about what's going on with the work world and the remoteness is that's really becoming very commonplace, and it's kind of an adapt or die type world. So everyone's got to do the best that they can to adapt to their situation. And what do your clients want? Do they want more? For auditors, like, do they want us more to be a little bit more remote? But like, we still need to make sure we get what we need to get as auditors. So there's a balance that has to be found everywhere. And when it comes to people at our firms and whatnot, it's so important. I mean, culture is such a big thing for Kauffman Rawson, huge thing for KR. And it's different when it's different in this environment. And we're doing the best we can to have, what's called real talks, where people talk about a very tough discussion to talk about, and they kind of have an open filtered conversation about it. And we're trying to have, weekly meetings with entire teams, but, it's hard to, it's hard to just say, hey, did you catch that game last night? If you're busy working, if you're not around in the office. So there's a lot of things, obviously, that you learn in a physical office environment, a lot of intangible things that you might not pick up over a video screen. And so we're trying to, whenever possible, get those things across to people, but it's hard. I mean, it's definitely hard to do that. And, when I think about myself and kind of, if I was starting in this environment, I think it would be tough for me. I definitely think it would be challenging for me. So I try to think about that whenever I'm talking with somebody that's in those shoes, and being understanding of that and trying to give them, as much guidance and help as I can. So I think that's going to have to be the case going forward, based on whatever circumstances are happening at the time.
I think it's what everyone's talking about as the new normal, kind of, that return to workplace and the future of work, right? It doesn't seem like we're going back to every day in the office, but I don't think we're going back, where most companies, it seems, are not going to a full virtual. There's a lot of interesting thought leadership out there. A lot of the big consulting firms, McKinsey, Deloitte, PwC, and EY, all putting out some, pretty interesting articles about what companies are doing. And I think there's a Deloitte survey that spoke with executives, and I think it was nearly half, or even more so than that, are planning to implement some sort of hybrid model going forward, where employees are in the office some days and in the office, not in the office other days. And kind of doing that flexible work environment that, maybe works, maybe doesn't. I think we're all kind of learning how that works, but it was interesting to see that. And I think this pandemic has really reset kind of people's expectations on, what's the normal, what's the normal requirements for going to the office, and what's the normal, expectations and that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And as we go further along and we get more and more data, obviously on the academic side, that's definitely a big point of emphasis, to understand the implications of some of these things, be able to show one way or the other with data how these are translating to different outcomes, right? Whether that be, firm level profitability type goals, or even at the individual level. So so really good discussion there. The last thing that we wanted to talk to everybody about and share some perspective on is, that ESG angle that's been very, big point of emphasis this morning, both the academic and the executive perspectives. Lend a little bit of thought there, and a large discussion, probably more so than in the prior sessions, on diversity, equity, and inclusion. One area that really shines on. So, recently Forbes came out and said Miami Herbert Business School was one of the top 10 in terms of diversity, which is something that I think everyone associated with the university is extremely proud of. And that goes for the undergraduate, school-wide, right? We're also top in the country. So, some of like the way that we began this conversation, one of the things that attracted us here and made us want to pursue our education here is the emphasis on that. And so now, think we can kind of talk about that in the workplace, some of those perspectives on ESG and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Jasmine, would you like to lead us off with some thoughts and start the discussion?
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you. So diversity is one of those, I used to always and still do consider it a great resource, right? But a resource is only as well as you use it. And so I think diversity was one of those key elements that helped me choose PwC as a firm that I wanted to go work with. And it was, I saw, demonstrated in those early, interactions with the firms. And I interviewed with several firms, and I would always try to observe and see, what was being done, what was actually happening. And so I've been a part of different initiatives, PwC, the different summer leadership programs and things like that. And I think, we've come to understand that there, are over 30 different aspects of diversity. And I think that with being quarantined and being in this virtual work environment, I feel like it's that list is growing in terms of aspects of diversity. And it's a large umbrella with very pervasive impacts, right? So I think that some companies are, really starting to continuing to be intentional about expanding what that diversity and inclusion model looks like, even into the benefits. So benefits such as, egg freezing, like for the women who, want to wait and have different family planning goals, right? Looking at people with different needs when it comes to parenting and how that impacts their way of work and the flexibility they need. It's like that flexibility that was marketed is now just like the norm and like necessary. We're understanding how necessary a culture of flexibility is. And also understanding that it's the diversity and inclusion, but that third step of belonging, establishing an environment and culture where it's beyond the policy and it's beyond the programming, and now it's embedded into how we work, how we lead, how we interact with our clients, how we interact with one another, and making sure that respect and empathy are like at the root of our interactions. And with everything that we do. And I think that starts to then go corporate level, right? And that's where, some of our ESG reporting comes up. Consumers, employees, and investors are all looking at how businesses are demonstrating that responsibility, that corporate responsibility, and they're being more vocal. Right? It's not just activists that are happening in the boardrooms. You now have people who are very vocal online, right? Very vocal with social media, very vocal with even having websites that present facts on, okay, this organization stands here on these topics, or they stand, they're supporting this particular piece of legislation, whatever it is. There are are websites that literally index companies and where they stand on these topics and provide rankings, literally. And so I think it's becoming a much more vocal environment. And I feel like people are not afraid to leave companies where they don't feel respected, right? It's becoming less of there's becoming less leeway, like, of staying in a place where they don't feel respected, or that diversity and inclusion and belonging are important in actuality to the company. And even different apps like Fishbowl, right, are different forums where transparency is at the root, right? And understanding where your colleagues or your staff really stand and how they are perceiving how an organization is responding to social stimuli or social events that are happening, in addition to how they are interacting with these diversity policies. Shannon, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, Jasmine. My perspective, I was part of Deloitte's Inclusion Council for a number of years, and I will say, over the last few, I think this, we've continued to step up the efforts in making sure that we're looking at inclusion, not just maybe from the traditional viewpoints. And you mentioned that there's like 30 different areas that you've looked at or that are considered and probably growing. What came to mind when you said that. I think another area of sort of diversity is people's family and caregiver status. With COVID and people having responsibilities at home, if you were a parent or a caregiver or had other responsibilities, that could really change your your ability to work, or maybe the hours that you worked. And I know that a lot of firms now are kind of recognizing that now that was sort of highlighted with the pandemic. So the future, kind of going back to work, I think people and firms are allowing for more of that flexibility to work where and when you want, to allow for people to work when they can, and kind of still be able to do what they need to for their family and for themselves. So that was sort of interesting. And
Yeah.
I think this is a really, really interesting topic. And Ravi, if you can feel free to jump in.
Yeah, KR has a lot of different diversity initiatives that we engage in, making sure that people are happy with what we're doing in the community, as well as making sure that our voices are heard with each other. Like I was mentioning, those real talks are a big thing, where we take a lot of hot button issues and we and we talk about them. And it's really interesting to hear people's perspectives on many different sides of a particular issue. And so it's very important, as far as it kind of all goes back to the mental health and people feeling like this is being considered and always thought about, and companies caring about their people. I mean, that's always been a thing that KR has really prided itself on, is people first. And this is such a big aspect of that, making sure that when we're sourcing people, like, we're considering everybody. We're looking at schools that might have a different population set than another school. Like we've said, I mean, UM, whenever you want to think about diversity, I always think of UM is the first place I think about, because it's always been one of the more diverse populations in university populations in the country. And that's I think that's always been such a great pride point of ours. And there's so many things that make UM such a great place, but that's really one of the best parts about it. I think I probably will never be in a community as diverse as the UM community in that bubble again, but it was really it's a great reflection on our world today. I think that the UM population, and it's why I think people that leave UM are so successful in so many ways, because they've really, whether they realized it or not, they're picking up on just how people think, how different cultures believe in certain things, and just being understanding with the fact that, we're all different, we all come from different backgrounds, but, together, there's nothing we can't accomplish. And that I think that that's something that prides itself on, and it's something that us as leaders coming out of that's a big job of ours, to make sure that we, by our actions and by like what how we do things, how we treat people, that we're treating everybody fairly, and that we're doing what we can to make everyone feel like it's what you do that's what matters. I mean, and that's where we want to go.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think from the school's perspective, right? It's like when you go to class and when you look around, right? That's what you expect to see when you take that first opportunity, right? Or at the very least, it becomes an expectation of the experience that you intend to have, right? And so, the emphasis that UM's placed on that, and how that's manifested itself into this type of experience, Robbie, I think is exactly on point. And from the academic side, right? Like, there's screening tools, and there are, it's part of the hiring process at many major universities across the country, right? The people that are responsible in these formative years of the undergraduate and graduate curriculums, right, for our young leaders, that faculty can articulate important concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion, and even some of these other environmental and governance related concepts, but that diversity, equity, inclusion in particular is a point in which you need to be able to communicate what that means, and what's kind of led to the development of your views on that, and how you are going to promote that in your classroom, right? Because that's critical in terms of forming those perspectives of our future business leaders. So it's good to see that you guys had an experience that was reflective of at least what we see in the data and the emphasis that the school has had. So I think we have a few more minutes. Jasmine, I don't know if you wanted to end off with some of the other ESG related points, and then we can send off.
Sure. So I think from my perspective, I think being at PwC has really helped me to see what it looks like when an organization is really embracing it, and kind of being one of the leaders in the charge, right? And it makes it that much easier to have conversations with my clients, with my staff, and even with prospective candidates about, like, okay, demystifying, what is ESG, even though it's still emerging and evolving. I think that having those examples, and even having additional, trainings, like we had a whole series, ESG series, hosted by NYU, that was available to our staff and partners this past year, which has had maybe six different sessions and been super informative. So the upskilling around it, and then also the opportunities to work on different engagements related to it, I think have been really, really positive. And I think we've seen, I think, as a consumer, right, even on the consumer side, like seeing the activism that's happening just like digitally, right? I know one example was the whole Wayfair situation that happened, and the allegations around that, and how consumers are holding, and investors are holding, companies accountable for their relationships, right? I remember earlier they were talking about like third-party relationships, and how investors and consumers and business partners are taking it really seriously who they're doing business with, right? And
I think we might have lost Jasmine, Jasmine there, but I'd echo her sentiments. I think consumers and employees are really taking sort of this diversity, ESG, and that whole kind of area really seriously now, and I think that's been even highlighted even more in this past couple of years. So it's been great chatting with you guys about this. I think we could probably go on for for a very long time talking about this as an area.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this lunchtime chat, with our young leaders, and we look forward to engaging with you guys. Feel free to reach out to the department or the young leaders group if there's anything that we can do to connect with your former alum. We're happy to do that. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Ravi and Jasmine and everybody. Go Canes.
Everybody,
Go
go
Canes.
Canes.